surprises. Who's ahead now? I'm not sure I know, but I'm here with Pete Hammond of Deadline Hollywood, who really knows this stuff. And I'm Tom ONeil of Gold Derby. Pete, let's just start with, what do you think?
I think, well, you know what? It's overwhelming, all of this stuff and all of these nominations. My God, you know, is there anybody that didn't get nominated? Well, yes.
Bob Odenkirk.
As you say, shockers.
Yes.
Here today in the acting categories everywhere. In unexpected ways. I had thought going into this Emmys with the pandemic and everything that the Academy was going to come up with a whole new thing and they were going to discover all these shows. They did to a degree, but not to the degree I thought. If you look at the list and you really look at the names, it's very familiar. It's kind of expected, but in those that didn't make the list, Bob Odenkirk and
Elizabeth Moss, Nicole Kidman.
Nicole Kidman, a lot of these big names that didn't show up is
Viola Davis.
Reese Witherspoon, I think, set a record for being snubbed for 3 different shows.
I noticed that. Wow, it was downright tragic. Because stars kept getting in. Kerry Washington gets in for Little Fires Everywhere, and Jennifer Aniston got in for Morning Show.
You see that, and there's sad things too. It just depends on the competition in the categories. But I thought it was interesting with normal people that Paul Mescal, who had really never acted before, this was his first thing, did get nominated in lead actor in a limited series. But Daisy, his well-deserving co-star, ignored in the actress. This often happens here in award shows, and it's the saddest thing, I think, too, where you have two that are both deserving, and how do you separate them? And the Emmys have done it again this year. I don't know. I don't know what this is going to do for the Emmys. Tom, I can tell you one thing.
What's that?
And it is the presentation of the nominations this morning, led by Leslie Jones and the 3 presenters, was an unmitigated disaster.
It was painful to watch. I know. She was trying too hard.
I hope that not just her, the whole way it was produced. I hope the primetime Emmys find a different way to do this virtually than that. And I hope that was not a preview. It did not get us off on a good start here. So what did you think here? What was your take on this?
Yeah, the 2 big jaw droppers in the comedy and drama series contests, of course, were Mandalorian getting in, which is very welcome because we have a bunch of new players here. We have Disney Plus, we have Quibi, we have Apple TV Plus in the race. And it's great that one of them got in, but it wasn't the one we thought was going to get in for drama series. We thought Morning Show would get in, and then Morning Show got a ton of nominations elsewhere. It got directing, it got virtually every actor in the place except Reese. It got tons of other nominations. And then over on the comedy side, Insecure getting in for the first time. It was really wonderful to see that. And then
the big shocker in comedy was what we did
Shadows.
Is that this year's Schitt's Creek that somehow comes up after being completely ignored? Three of the 6 writing nominations went to What We Do in the Shadows. That's my group. You know, I'm in the Academy, and I also am in the writers branch, and that was a real head scratcher to me.
So how did that happen? What's your view of that?
Well, you know, when you're looking at those writer ballots, some of them are very smart and they enter 1 episode. They just get together and they do 1 so they don't cancel themselves out. Others, like this one, had multiple episodes, which I think would have canceled them out. They get nominated for almost all of them. It was really off the wall. It's happened before. Mad Men, I think one year had 4 of 5 writing. So sometimes they will just check off the show. But in this case, I did not expect them to check off this show. It was a tribute to FX in this case too. And we're talking about networks here. Look at Netflix just running away with it.
160 nominations. Wow. Up radically from like 119 or something last year.
Yeah, and 107 for HBO, but it lost Game of Thrones this year, you know. Right. So it was down to 107. It's interesting to me to look at that and look at inside those numbers, though. Netflix, by my count, had 52 different shows represented among those nominations. HBO, 21 different shows. So, you know, you're looking at a real disparity. This is just throw it all against the wall, Netflix, and see what sticks. And a lot of it stuck with Academy members this morning in that way. So good for them. However, looking at the drama series, looking at the comedy series, looking at the limited series, and looking at television movie, where Netflix has won consistently with Black Mirror till they figured out that isn't a movie. But they still got 4 of 5 nominations. They still have not won in those 3 main categories, drama, comedy, and limited series. And this year they will trying to break that streak of losing in those. And it looks to me the front runners in all 3 of those categories are not those Netflix shows again. So you look at HBO with Watchmen, for instance, in limited series. It looks like HBO can come up with that, and if not them, then Mrs. America from FX. You look at comedy series where Netflix has Dead to Me, which broke through, and Kaminsky, and does not look to triumph there either, which might go to HBO finally for Curb Your Enthusiasm, back to Amazon for Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. You know, who knows? And then drama series where Succession is probably the front runner again for HBO, despite the fact Netflix has 3 series here. Stranger Things was a surprise sneaking again here.
Because it wasn't eligible last year and it came roaring back big time this year. But I disagree with you, Pete. I think Ozark has a real chance to win here.
That's the one in drama series that if Netflix, well, of course, The Crown, I always think The Crown might pull it out once. But if one's going to do it, Ozark is an example of what happened during the pandemic. It really got viewed. It really got fans. It's still talked about. It is the one, if it's not going to be Succession, this is Netflix's best shot, absolutely, to finally break into these. And then in the TV movie category, you know, it has 4 nominations, but the other one belongs to HBO, and it's Bad Education, which probably may be the front runner there. So,
But overall, there was not a surprise in disrupting this race in terms of who we think the front runners are. It still looks like it's Maisel versus Schitt's Creek. Maisel got 20 nominations. Schitt's Creek got 15. Over on the drama side, it looks like Succession and Ozark. And so those still came through real strong. I don't know what can be.
You know, if Ozark loses to Succession, then Schitt's Creek, which I think is a sentimental favorite in its final year, and I think really strong in these nominations if you look at where it got nominated. Ironically, Schitt's Creek was completely ignored by the Academy until last year, when coincidentally it started appearing on Netflix as they started to see it. Wouldn't it be ironic if Schitt's Creek wins this thing for Pop TV, thanks to its exposure on Netflix? There you go.
And let's explain. The first 5 seasons of Schitt's Creek are on Netflix. The final season on the Pop channel has to be discovered through the Academy's platform, etc. But what Pete's talking about here, of course, is that the Breaking Bad broke through finally at the Emmys after it was put onto Netflix, and then the older seasons, and then they caught up with it. That's that's very popular.
It's an irony, Tom, but we love irony. You know, I'm about to post my analysis of all of this, and my little preview of that is I talk about Netflix really breaking through in the numbers, really being king of the mountain here on nomination day, and getting to crow about all of that as a preview of what could happen in the Oscar season too, because if you look at what Netflix has in store, just in terms of numbers, sheer content coming up this year, on paper, it looks like this could be repeated at the Oscars too, where we're talking about Netflix being the big winner on nomination day.
Yeah. What was your favorite nomination today where you thought, I called that, you know, like I didn't have the guts to go with Zendaya, but I knew she could get in. I just knew it. And I was just the night.
Really? She was just a shocker to me. First of all, that was on last summer. People haven't been talking about the HBO hadn't really been talking about it in a big way here compared to their other shows. And to see her break through was really quite interesting. The show got a few nominations there, and that was the biggest surprise. In terms of things I called, I can't say that I went out on a limb in any way here. I was hoping against hope, I guess, that Robert Forster, the late great Robert Forster, would pull off a posthumous nomination. He didn't. And I was sad about that. I sort of went out on a limb on that one, and it didn't happen. But no, you know what? I'm happy in the lead actress that Octavia Spencer broke through. I was hoping she would, but I didn't think she would. And because they weren't talking about it in those numbers, and the
self-made, we're talking about here.
Yeah, the other ones that got in that got in were, she was more of a surprise there than some of the ones that were left off of that. And you know, I don't know what happens every year. Look, there's 23,000 voters in the Academy, and in different branches we vote different ways, and it all sort of adds up. Interesting to see that what I would call genre series are off the beaten track of what we used to think would win Emmys, like Watchmen or like The Mandalorian. Those are accepted now, and Game of Thrones. So we're seeing a different kind of Emmys, you know, that always used to snub anything outside of the norm, like a really good shows like Battlestar Galactica and others that could never break through. Here's one thing I'm sad about that I was hoping against, and I didn't predict it, but it should have been The Good Fight. You know, The Good Fight.
Oh, yeah, on CBS Access.
Is it just they don't watch CBS Access? Is that the problem? Can it get on Netflix somehow? And if it does, it will be seen at the Emmys next year, I think. But Good Fight is a good show that just consistently gets overlooked. And what do they have against Rhea Seehorn?
Yes, that was. I know that it was.
And Bob Odenkirk. Oh my God, not getting nominated this year, first time.
Yeah. But you know, there's this thing about Better Call Saul at the Emmys. It's never. I don't think it's ever won a single one, and it's got like 30 nominations. I don't know what that's all about. But I do. When I saw the Gold Derby predictions for a lot of these stars, even the other stars of Better Call Saul, I thought that's not going to happen this morning, and it didn't.
Yeah, it's interesting. I really, you know, I thought Rhea she had such a good season, and so did he. It was his best work ever. I don't really know how to explain that one, because I know they see that show. So I don't know. When I say they, who's they? They is we.
They is we. A final thought here, Pete, on diversity. The Emmys did okay today. Insecure got in for series, which it never had done before. Issa Rae was not nominated last year, was 2 years ago. She came back. We had Rami Youssef is not only nominated for comedy actor, he's nominated for directing, and that's great. But the show,
not the series itself, you know, not the series.
But the series didn't get in. Yeah,
I counted 35 people of color among all the acting nominees. I think that's a huge step forward.
It is a step forward, but it's also there were some nice steps backward, Pete. It was nice to see Tracy Ellis Ross return. Now, last year Anthony Anderson from Blackish got in. She did not, but she's royalty, of course, and deserves that nomination. That was kind of cool to see, and just diversity across the board. You know, shows like Black Ladies sketch series got in. That was exciting to see, and you know, the Regina King, Kerry Washington, Jeremy Pope from Hollywood.
That was a surprise. You know? Although Hollywood did well in the acting categories, and I was very happy to see Holland Taylor get nominated there. I thought she was just wonderful in that. I was sorry that Patti LuPone was overlooked, but I think they put her in the lead category, and that is too tough to do. Also, Dylan McDermott and Jim Parsons got nominated from Hollywood too. So the actors came up to the plate for that miniseries, that limited series, which did not get nominated. In the limited series, I'm calling for 10 nominations in every category.
I think that's absolutely wise. Everybody has their top 10 lists of everything. So should the Emmys, so should the Oscars.
Yes, I think so. Absolutely. And particularly the Emmys, because the level of content now in television, and every year it grows, we're seeing new players come in. It's just overwhelming. So let's just call it what it is, and put 10 nominations in there, and try to stem the tide of these disappointments going on all over the industry virtually this morning, from those who didn't make the list. And you know, it's sad for them, but next year's another year.
Next year's okay, Pete. Well, thank you very much for your reactions. We have to all of us, Pete, all the editors, everyone, go in, make your predictions now for the winners. We're still 2 months away, and it's still a race that can change and zig and zag as races do. Thank you, Pete.
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, now I'm going to bring in the rock stars of Gold Derby, the editors, Joyce Eng, Paul Sheehan, and Chris Beachum. And first of all, a shout out to our buddy Paul here, who beat us all at Emmy predictions this morning with the best score, tying Riley Chow. Congratulations, Paul.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Oh, you're so busy working on it, you hadn't seen Chris's score reports yet? Yes. Joyce and I follow you in a tie, and then Chris, Joyce, Chris, and I, we all got 68%, but there must have been one little fraction of a percentage point off, but we all did very well. Congratulations.
Well, you say we did well, but Chris, since you do those score reports, how did we do compared to the people watching, those thousands and thousands of people that make predictions at Gold Derby?
Oh, you're asking something I'll have to pull up. Hold on a second.
Oh. Well, I don't think we have bragging rights to being the best of everyone, just maybe the best among our editors.
No, we did very well. The top scores were all 70s.
Okay. But when I was listening to you and Pete, he had his Godzilla T-shirt on, which just made me think Netflix. I mean, Netflix was the Godzilla, stomping all over everyone with nominations today. But Joyce, you had such insight into. You've been a huge fan of Succession. And I think that what's so interesting, remember you were talking about the strategy of Succession on some of the below the line stuff in terms of the nominations they limited themselves to, right?
Oh, yeah. In writing, they just submitted one and got in the finale. So, I mean, they could have been like Mad Men when it was just easily pulling like 3 or 4 nominations a year. Like it could have submitted like Turnhaven and Hunting and still gotten in. Instead, we have Ozark with like 3 writing nominations. But I still think it's Succession's to lose. I'm thrilled that it went from 0 to 9 acting nominations, Succession. Like I know a lot of people were, thinking like actors hate the show. They don't. They apparently hate Better Call Saul, but they don't hate Succession. And, it didn't get any acting nominations last year. It didn't get SAG. But I think, kind of overestimated those snubs last year because it only became egregious in hindsight because last year, this time, Succession got like 5 acting nominations. Like no one was freaking out that it didn't get acting or 5 nominations total. No one was freaking out they didn't get any acting nominations. It was just like, oh, it got 5, it got series. Brian Cox didn't make it in. It only became a big deal after season 2 premiered last August after nominations and blew up. And that was when people were freaking out that I can't believe it didn't get any acting nominations. And then it got snubbed at SAG. So I actually, I wasn't conservative with my acting predictions for Succession. I think I predicted like 6. I'm upset I took out Harriet Walter last night because I had her in. But yeah, to go from 0 to 9 and 3 in supporting actor, including Cousin Greg. They asked for Greg Sprinkles, got in, so I'm very happy.
Chris, I'm going to toss off to you on this. I'm going to show us a, whoops. Did it show up? Oh yes. This is a comment from our chat stream here. This chap saying The Mandalorian 15 nominations. That was this huge surprise, wasn't it, Chris?
Absolutely. Disney Plus just debuted last November or so, wasn't it? And I really felt like they were going to get double-digit nominations because they have so many craft categories. I felt like they were going to get in, but here they got into series. They got in Giancarlo Esposito for acting. I mean, that's a major accomplishment for a first-time show. And the Star Wars movies, this is in the Star Wars universe, have not done all that well at the Oscars recently. So I don't think we were expecting this much praise at the Emmys for Mandalorian.
I think they would have nominated Baby Yoda if they could have. And I think Giancarlo, because he also got in for Better Call Saul. He was the only Better Call Saul acting nomination, which was crazy. He got in over Jonathan Banks, who I never thought would be dropped, even if he was never going to win. But I feel like it was like people like just loved Mandalorian and Giancarlo in it, and they like the actors nominated him, and they're like, oh, I'll just check him off for Better Call Saul as well. But yeah, I like you said, Tom, I don't think Better Call Saul is ever winning an Emmy, which breaks my heart because it's over 32.
Oh, it's over 32.
It's over 32. I think it got 7 today. But it's especially crazy because this was its best season yet, and Rhea Seehorn was MVP. You know, I was like willing to die on that hill and, you know, predict her this year. I'm going to get her that TCA award. I've been predicting or nominating her for years. So I voted for her this year. So she better get that. Yeah. But like Bob Odenkirk missing as well. Like that is, and Jonathan Banks. Like I never thought like they would just drop him like that. And for Giancarlo, who like, I love, but like Gus didn't really have that much to do this season.
But you were talking about the actors loving Succession, so I'm completely flummoxed at how they didn't nominate Tom Pelphrey and Janet McTeer for Ozark. I mean, I had Tom Pelphrey winning.
Oh yeah, I always thought like Tom Pelphrey's like hardest, you know, like the hardest thing for him to do was to get the nomination, but once he got in, he could win. Like this is like reminiscent of Corey Stoll on House of Cards when he got snubbed for that, and everyone was like he could have won if he gotten in. So
see, I thought that last year on Luke Kirby, I thought his biggest challenge was going to get the nomination because nobody knew who he was before Maisel, and then he got in and obviously won. Yeah,
there are some people who like they can get in and then they just cruise to win. Like I thought Billy Porter last year, like his hardest thing was to like get the nomination, but once he got it, like you could win. So I don't know, like it's like 8 slots, and he could have just missed. Like we don't know like the totals. Like you know, Morning Show got 2 supporting actors. Succession got 3. You know, Morning Show just kind of replicated its SAG run because it got these individual actors nominated, but not the top award because it missed ensemble there and it missed drama series here. Well, so Morning Show could also be like the new like This Is Us, where like actors are just really down for it, but not everyone like.
That's what happened with Hollywood too. They snubbed it.
That's like the limited series.
The program thing, but a ton of the actors came in. Paul, a couple months ago. Go ahead.
I wanted to make one point that because they expanded the categories this year based on the number of submissions, they got rid of they had another rule. If you were within X percent, you 2%, got to be 2%. So since they got rid of that, it could literally have been 1 vote. And I do wonder with those actors if they sort of think, well, McTeer and Pelphrey are done with that show, so I don't know, they're gone and forgotten. So it was disappointing.
Maybe, I don't know, but she's been on the show before,
right?
So yeah, I don't know. And he was like such a two-hander with like Laura this year too. So I don't know.
Right.
Paul, a couple of months ago when we were all starting to make our predictions, our buddy Thelma Adams put What We Do in the Shadows at the top of her list for comedies. I sent her an email saying, "Oh, Thelma, come on!"
Now, I remember.
Yes, and then I think I scared her out of listing it. So, what is that all about? I mean, it's a wonderful show. It's hilarious. It's smart and clever, but it's not an Emmy-friendly show. It's like what Chris is saying about and Joyce about Mandalorian. It's not your typical Emmy contender. It's a surprise, but we didn't. If there was an FX comedy series here, we thought it was going to be better things.
Yeah, but I think it's also not the old TV Academy. I mean, it's gone sort of under the radar compared to the Motion Picture Academy, but the TV Academy has also been on a diversity drive, and they've been expanding their membership. And I think there are many more people that are younger, starting out in the industry, a little hipper, a little more diverse. And I think that you're seeing that reflected in Mandalorian, like Chris said. Wouldn't be surprising that it got into these marquee categories. And the same with that FX show. I think 5 years ago, I don't know if either of them would have been nominated by that TV Academy, but this one is interested in those kinds of shows.
Tom, it's 2 words on that one. Sometimes a person in this industry, whoever it is, gets on such a hot streak, they get in for every possible award show. So Taika Waititi, who won the Oscar earlier this year, is one of the executive producers. He got nominated today for narration on that show. Wow. So he is on such a hot streak. I think that pushed it over the top.
I mean, there was a little bit more like buzz. I thought it was like maybe a little like niche. It wasn't like big like Fleabag like last year, but like the season 2 did have a lot more buzz than season 1, and you know this like it got 3 writing nominations, which is the craziest part. Like what Pete was saying before, that you know sometimes when people oversubmit, they can cancel each other out, but like the writers just went hard for it. And I think I got a writing or WGA nomination this year as well. So that was kind of like, you know, a precursor. So we maybe should have seen it coming, even though we don't predict writing in our prediction center for the nominations.
I think one that we don't predict, but I think we could have predicted on the comedy directing side, they reserve 1 slot for the old 3-camera comedy. And Jim Burrows got nominated for that for the tribute to I Love Lucy on Will and Grace. So
Modern Family also got in for their finale. It came back.
But because of that sort of, there's very, very few 3-camera comedies left, and they reserve 1 slot. So I'm delighted for Jim Burrows.
What about who's ahead to win now? Let's stick with comedy here for a second. It's 20 nominations for Maisel, 15 for Schitt's Creek. They both came into this based on our predictions and expectations, very strong. Is this a race between those two now? And which one is out front? Chris, you go first.
Yeah, I think it's a very tight race there. I've got, when we launch the prediction center in a few minutes, I'll probably put Maisel first. Just sheer number of nominations, more support across all branches. And I think they both did about what you expected on the acting side. That's usually a place to look on where do they miss. Maisel did miss a very, what I thought was easy two easy acting nominations. One for Jane Lynch, who won last year in the guest category, should have easily gotten into 8 slots for supporting. And then Leroy McLean, who turned in a very highly praised performance on the show. Sort of a not first time actor, but somebody people didn't know before this series. I thought he was an easy nomination on the supporting actor side, and he didn't get in. So those do make me question whether Maisel's out front or not.
Joyce, you usually have strong thoughts on this race that I give you a hard time about.
I mean, I've had Schitt's Creek this whole time, so I'm going to stick with it. And another place where Maisel missed today was writing. It won 2 years ago, it missed last year, and it missed this year for double Schitt's Creek and triple What We Do in the Shadows. So I guess like the writers aren't just here for it anymore. But I think Schitt's Creek can take it, and like what you and Pete were talking about earlier with it being on Netflix, even though the final season I think won't be on Netflix until October, like its usual schedule. But I don't think that really matters in this case since it did so well today. Like last year it did the hard part of getting in with those 4 nominations, including comedy series. So it blew up this year with a whole bunch more, and it got into supporting too. So I have that winning right now.
And I'm going to say Schitt's Creek as well. I think it's sort of such a part of the culture now. I mean, ooh, David. I mean, the memes everywhere, and then you think about. I mean, Catherine O'Hara is going to be queen of the Emmys, and you know that Eugene Levy's son Dan Levy is nominated in directing and writing as well as acting. I think it's got a heart. And it's heartwarming, and it's. I think that people that binge it on Netflix, and then, as you said, Tom, probably watch the final season on the Emmy viewing platform. I mean, the evolution of the characters, and it also was. It achieved something in terms of finales, series finales. I mean, I think it satisfied the fans. It was a nice bow on the series.
But you know, I was talking to a good friend of ours yesterday. Who I can't name here, but we were talking about the voting trends for comedy series. And Chris, this is for you because you're our historian. Schitt's Creek doesn't, or it does or doesn't, depending on how you size it up. Shows that win comedy series tend to have a snob appeal, like Modern Family, Fleabag, Maisel. You know, just the silly shows, Curb Your Enthusiasm, those kinds of utterly silly shows tend not to win. You can go back to the 60s when the Beverly Hillbillies was the #1 show on TV, and the Emmys opened expecting this Beverly Hillbillies sweep. And what happened? The Dick Van Dyke Show pulled off these big upsets. There's a history of this. My question to you, Chris, is Schitt's Creek too silly and non-snobby compared to Maisel, or should we look at the argument it does have snob appeal? This is Schitt's Creek because these are characters who once were very wealthy and now are in bad circumstances. Yes, it has a sophistication and a snob appeal that's not obvious on the screen. Is Schitt's Creek too silly to win?
I don't think so. I think it's a razor-tight race here based on all the nominations that both got today. What's interesting is one big interesting thing to me is how it's a discovery show. All the other seasons weren't really nominated at the Emmys until last year. So that fits into the theory you had last year, Tom, on why Fleabag might overtake Maisel, which is that word evangelistic. People have found this show and it wasn't forced on them. It was neighbors telling neighbors, friends telling friends kind of a situation. And that often gets votes these days. Parasite won at the Oscars for this exact same reason, where it's not forced on you, but you find it and you discover it.
But both of those examples that you cited, Chris, Fleabag and Parasite, were both won on the ground. And you and I talk about this all the time because we're on the ground with these people. And there's the events and the parties and the Q&As, and it's the conversation and the crosstalk. And here we haven't had that because of coronavirus. So we haven't,
but I think it's been. If this was the year where it took off at the Emmys for the first time, I think it might have more difficulty. But the fact that it did get in last year for many of these same races, I think that helps it. I also think, Eugene and Catherine are comedy royalty. It may not be a snobby show, but they come from the SCTV background, that Canadian, speaking of Paul being here, that Canadian comedy background. Martin Short got in today, by the way, too. I love that. So there is a snobby appeal around that SCTV kind of culture. And I think that's going to help them, too.
I mean, the other thing is that unlike some of these shows that premiered in the spring or like after quarantine, Schitt's Creek finished airing in April. So it did its regular press finale farewell tour over the winter already. So they were out and about just earlier this year. So they have met people before we had to be 6 feet away from them. So they have that edge over some of these shows and actors who are unable to do in-person stuff right now.
I'm going to pull up this comment from our stream here from Jordan, who says, Shira Haas, yay, talking about unorthodox. This is, it's not a surprise it got in because this is something, to Chris's point a few minutes ago, of just things discovered and talked about. The buzz on this from Facebook and Twitter and just from industry friends is so fierce. You got to see the show. It's a discovery show, and it did so well today. I'm talking about unorthodox. Who wants to?
Well, I think we should give a shout out to one of our other editors, Susan Wazena, who on a Monday morning in our meeting talked about this amazing show she had watched on Netflix over the weekend, and she was desperate. She said, "Let me write something about it. This thing is so good," and it was just because Netflix sort of rotates what it promotes on, and she just dove into it and then came up 4 hours later and was super excited about it. And I think that got this groundswell. People just, as Chris was saying, became evangelistic about a show, if you can, about a show about Orthodox Jews. Netflix
did a great job too. They're all in touch with me over the course of these past few months about setting up interviews and what stories are we writing and all that kind of stuff. And Riley Chow, who we mentioned earlier, that did so well in our predictions, interviewed Shira, interviewed the supporting actor, interviewed the showrunner, I think a couple of other people. So they were really pumping it. And I remember when they first asked about doing interviews, it had either debuted or maybe it had debuted internationally. There was hardly any discussion about it at first. It took a couple of weeks for people to start discovering it, and then it took off. And I think it was around June, maybe mid-June, when I added the show and Shira to my predictions.
I had them in and I took them out like idiots. I was not going to.
Yeah, unorthodox and normal people were the two kind of like slow burn discoveries for like fans and viewers this year. Normal people didn't make series, but Paul and Mescal got into actor. The new rule with the proportional nominees based on the number of submissions, like only limited, no pun intended, the lead limited acting races to 5 nominees. So, which made like lead actress really hard because for a while we thought like there was like a set 6, but then 2 of those people did not get in at all. The unbelievable leads, Caitlin Dever and Merritt Weaver. So I'm very happy Shira got in. And then also Octavia Spencer, who I don't know where she was in her odds, but she was not in the top 5. And then Carrie got in over Reese, like you guys mentioned before. I also think this is, don't quote me on this, but this might be the first time that every acting category has a person of color nominee. I mean, it is like every category does have one, but I think this might be the first time it's true for like in the same year. So Joyce, I feel. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, on that note about categories with persons of color, there's one category that you have to have.
Oh, yeah. That I write about like every year. Drama supporting actor is the only long-running acting category without a Black winner. So they have a chance to fix that this year. So, but I feel like it with everything going on, like it does feel like voters made a conscious choice on their part to check out, shows that maybe they would not have checked out otherwise, or haven't checked out, or haven't had time to watch, because there are some different and unexpected nominees like Zendaya, and like you said before, some old faces like Anthony Anderson and Tracy Ellis Ross coming back and Issa Rae. So I do feel like people really did like make an effort to watch as many diverse things as they could, including The Mandalorian.
Any other interesting standouts to you guys this morning?
I'll mention one on kind of a personal level. 3 years ago, the Dolly Parton people reached out. Remember? She came to the studio. They did a huge push from NBC's side and Warner Brothers side, and they got in. And then they had another TV movie the next year. They didn't do anything. They didn't get in. So this year they did another big push. And for the last couple of weeks, they've been asking me, of course, it was Netflix this time and not NBC, but they've been asking me, because I have them in my predictions, do you really think we're getting in? Do you really think we're getting in? And I would say, yes, I think you're getting in. And this morning, it was one of the first things I looked up, and sure enough, there they were.
I thought of you immediately, Chris.
Well, what's interesting about that is it's a umbrella series. It's anthology, and it was only able to submit one of those into the TV movie because of the length. Right. It was the only one. They could have submitted
as limited series, but they really wanted, and Netflix really wanted it to be a movie, and they only had one. It happened to be really the best one because it was Kathleen Turner and Ginnifer Goodwin. But it's funny because Dolly, the comparison, Black Mirror, couldn't compete in movie anymore. So Netflix, Dolly says, started calling her thing Blonde Mirror.
That's funny.
Yeah. And then in terms of the number of shows, the variety sketch only having 3 nominees. I don't think I realized it was going to have so few.
Yeah, we thought it was going to be 4.
We thought it was going to be 4, but if you really look at the list, it's such a weak. Not that the 3 that didn't get in aren't strong, but just a week from a number of sketch shows on TV anymore. We've lost so many. With Portlandia being gone and Documentary Now and Amy Schumer and Key and Peele, so many aren't on anymore.
But there's certainly, as Tom said, there's almost 2 months to go, but people can make their predictions starting in probably a couple of hours, and those odds update every hour, don't they, Chris, based on the changes that people
we'll actually have the primetime event will launch, I hope, within the hour. Then I'll create the creative arts event, which will have another 20 to 25 categories in it. And it may be late today before that gets launched because so many of those documentaries and other types of programs have to be entered in our system. They're not already in the system.
Let me bring up this comment here from Aaron Brosnan, who says, unbelievable, underperformed. Did it?
Yeah, absolutely. What Joyce mentioned, the shock about we had the two lead women being nominated.
Yes, I see what you mean. Yes, it got in for a limited series, though, right?
And Merritt Weaver
Tony Collette got in.
Merritt Weaver is so popular within the Academy, having won twice, both times being surprises. I was a little skeptical about Caitlin Dever just because of her age, but I thought Merritt Weaver was a lock.
Yeah, but she was also competing for the comedy series performance with Ron.
But I think because that HBO had already announced that the run of Run was over after one season.
They canceled that during Emmy voting.
Yeah. So,
they didn't even bother waiting.
So, but we must mention Watchmen, right, Joyce? I mean, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm very happy. I predicted all three of the Watchmen supporting actors because I put two of them in last night. They snubbed Tim Blake Nelson, but another example.
Did you have him in or not in?
I had 4 Watchmen actors in, so I got 3 of them right.
You would have completely shocked me had you not. I had him winning. I thought he was winning.
I know. So I put like the other 2 in there last night, but it's another case of like they nominate like the black stars who are very deserving and great on the show over the white guy. But yeah, it dominated. I think at like 26, right? So it's like easily winning limited, which will also break the alternating years because HBO and FX have been alternating wins in limited series since 2014, and FX usually wins in even years, but Watchmen is going to take one for HBO this year.
So when they started it, I mean, when did they decide that there wasn't going to be a season 2 of this show?
It was just Damon Lindelof saying like he doesn't have an idea for season 2, but he's like open if like someone else wants to do a season 2 or whatever. So
we had him on our panel back in June, and I asked him that question. I didn't ask him when, but he just said as the process went on and they finished, he realized that he really thought he told a beginning, middle, end, and he didn't want to do it anymore.
And then we talked about the Emmys loving Merritt Weaver. Well, they really love Regina King. Mm-hmm. So, Joyce, I'm putting on the spot. Who are you predicting Regina King to win that category?
I might. I mean, I've had Cate Blanchett in first this whole time for nominations, but I might put Regina at first just because, I mean, I expected Watchmen to do well, but Mrs. America also underperformed. Like, it didn't get, some supporting actresses in, even though we knew, like, a bunch of them were going to get snubbed anyway, but Sarah Paulson didn't get in. And John Slattery. Yeah, John Slattery.
He was close to a lock, we thought.
Yeah, so I might, just put Regina in first. So, I mean, she won 3 and 4 years.
But Joyce, stay with this for a second, because historically, it's a Watchmen being a genre type show is disadvantaged when you're up against the kind of prestige retelling of history like Mrs. America is with this double Oscar winner Cate Blanchett and all this stuff. And there is here a comment. I'll pull it up while you're answering this question from one of our people who are saying that Watchmen overperformed. Here from Leandria.
Is that a bad thing though?
Like, in other words, did it overperform in terms? No. I guess the question is, or at least my question off this comment is did it overperform in the way that it's very nomination friendly as a show, but
it won't win anything, like The Irishman at the Oscars this year?
In terms of, I mean, it could win.
I think the difference is that like it's win competitive in a lot of these categories, and Regina is definitely win competitive in lead actress, and she's an Oscar winner too, and this is Cate Blanchett's first Emmy nomination. Regina already has a bunch of these, and Watchmen is a genre show, but it's also unfortunately incredibly timely and resonant and relevant. So I think it'll be very easy for people to vote for her It'll also be very easy for people for Kate Blanchett because she's Kate Blanchett. So I think it'll be a tight one between them.
From Regina's end, she's won 3 Emmys. Gold Derby as a website did not predict her for any of those 3. I didn't predict her for any of those 3. They were all surprises.
We shouldn't predict her for this.
So does Regina want us predicting her, or would she just as soon as predict Kate?
In our defense, we tend to be 70-some% right about these.
Listen, we predicted her loss to Laura Dern that year, so.
But just about Mrs. America, some of the women that we were expecting to be nominated didn't get in, but then old Emmy favorites like Margot Martindale, Tracy Ullman did. So, Tom, I mean, you voted for the Emmys in the past. I mean, how much of this do you think sometimes is then just name checking?
You're just quite a bit of it, yes. And that might happen with the winners now, too, because as we know, the voting is different now than it used to be.
Yeah, but that makes sense. That totally makes sense. But Sarah Paulson's not a name check. I mean, that's a pretty major snub. Rose Byrne is popular.
I think in Sarah's case, maybe people didn't finish the show because her tape is way at the end.
At the end, yeah, she has her breakup.
So,
and also, we're talking about the different changes in Emmy voting, and the other big change was no limits, right? You could just check as many.
Yeah, that was a couple years ago. It's just a lot of people just checked down a ballot. Like we saw that last year when They See Us, it got 8 acting nominations last year because actors just love that show, and Game of Thrones got 10 last year.
So we have, in terms of name checking, we must mention Blinken. You missed it. Brad Pitt on Saturday Night Live, and he's now an Emmy nominee.
Emmys just want their own Brad and Jen moment. Okay, that's all. Even though it'll be on different nights and they won't be together.
He's been there before.
Yeah, he was nominated for Friends.
That's right. Playing a frenemy of Jen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, his appearance was so surprising because he's never been on SNL before as a cameo or as a host, and he was talked about in doing the doctor thing for so many weeks ahead. I think both of those things had to help him when they saw his name on the ballot.
Well, also at the end of the bid when he broke character and thanked Rio Fauci and frontline workers, that was a nice touch.
But is it going to be one of those, if he won, would it be in the record books for maybe one of the shortest performances to win an Emmy?
Was even nominated for 14 seconds. So,
Margot won for an Americans.
She drank coffee for a minute.
Brad Pitt. I mean, that opening was probably 4 or 5 minutes. Margot, I think, was under 2 one year when she won.
Right, I had forgotten that.
And we love Margot. Always, whenever we say something negative about her, I always want to say.
I mean, her justified win is still one of the best in that category. So
that prompted a new rule, didn't it?
Ellen Burstyn.
That prompted a rule,
for 14 seconds.
Yeah, that 5% of the time, isn't that the rule?
It's 5% in the limited supporting.
Yeah, just 2 categories. They don't make it in effect anywhere else.
Because that's how Elizabeth Perkins wasn't eligible for Sharp Objects.
One thing when we on that subject, when I'm reaching out to the networks over in February, March, April, May, working on the Prediction Center, they will let me know things like that, like don't put in so and so. They don't meet the time requirements for the supporting limited. So it's always good for me to find those things out for us to have the Prediction Center correct.
So Tom, aren't we lucky to have? I mean, Chris with the knowledge of the rules and Joyce with this expansive knowledge of when she just tosses these things off, like the FX, HBO, the back and forth.
Listen, I just like weird trends, okay?
But she still tied me for prediction score today. So, stop complimenting her and not giving me equal dibs here.
Well, and the people watching know who Tom ONeil is, but if they don't understand his history with the TV Academy, it's written the only book ever written about the Emmy Awards. So I think that's how I discovered Gold Derby, was through reading Tom's books on the Emmys and movie awards and the Grammys, the only book ever written on the Grammys.
Yeah, they were published by Variety. I really need to update those and make them kind of digitally available at Gold Derby. But that means We'd all have to pitch in and help update them, and I don't want to do the work. All right, so let's look at the potential winners here, and let me pose a possibility that Issa Rae might beat Catherine O'Hara, that Rami Youssef might beat Eugene Levy. Is diversity, and it did well today at the Emmy nominations, and we're all happy about that for the Emmys and for TV and for America. But could it keep going, and could it be a great plus for some contenders? Or in the case of, because we're talking about newcomers here, we're talking about Issa Rae and Rami are relatively new stars. Are they just checkmated by the veteran status of these icons, Levy and O'Hara? Who wants to jump in there? Could there be an upset by either one of those contenders?
Well, diversity isn't just color. I mean, age as well. I mean, you think about Hollywood is not that welcoming to older women, and so Catherine O'Hara playing this over-the-top woman, of a certain age, I would argue that's diversity unto itself. It isn't sort of the pretty young thing. I mean, we talk about that at the Oscars, how Best Actress is Best Ingenue so often. So, I would make that argument.
Well, I wouldn't. And let me withdraw part of the question. I don't want to say that they would win. Issa Rae or Rami would win because of race, but I think there's such a critical consensus in the media world that they're deserving and that they are giving the best performances on TV, so that they might get taken seriously enough to win.
Issa is helped more, I think, by the fact that her series is up and Rami is not. But Rami's over in writing and directing, or just directing? I haven't looked at everything. And that's helped people like Donald Glover and Bill Hader. Recently, Aziz Ansari would win in directing or writing. He would not win in acting. So we've seen that quite a few times. But Joyce would know better than I. Most of your lead actors have been from series nominees, right?
Yeah, and also, I mean, he is sort of like playing a version of himself, which is not something they usually go for, but I think he can win because it's a great show and he's very good in it, and I think he's also in an easier category. I don't think Eugene is as much of a lock as Catherine might be. And again, like you said, I would hope no one is voting for minorities and people of color because they're people of color. No one wants a handout. They're, both of them are great on their show, but I think Catherine, there's too much buzz for Moira, for that character, for her. When you talk about Schitt's Creek, you talk about Moira and her. So I think that might be enough to carry her to the win. And the show is over as well, but Emmys aren't usually sentimental a lot. But yeah, I think maybe if we're talking about upsets, you might look in lead actor, which I think is a bit more of an open race.
And Joyce just wanted, because I know Joyce wrote about this, that the idea of the two leads of a comedy series winning. It doesn't happen a lot, does it, Joyce?
Oh, if you want not since 30 Rock and Comedy, and it will be even rarer. It will only be the fourth show to win both leads and comedy series if Schitt's Creek takes all three. So yeah. So if you don't want to put all your eggs in Schitt's Creek's basket, maybe predict another winner for one of those categories.
Okay, we got to wrap up here now. We're almost approaching the 1 hour mark of our live show. And I just would love all of you to just take your turns on making at least one prediction you feel pretty good about. or an underdog that you think could spoil it. What race or two are you really looking at with excitement or certainty?
I would say certainty for me is Succession, and uncertainty would be then the drama supporting category. for actor, because of all the 3 Succession men in there. Had it only been 2, I probably would be pretty sure about Kieran Culkin. Now I'm not.
Yeah, I'm gonna co-sign that. Succession all the way. I think it could actually dominate. And yeah, those supporting categories, I think Sarah Snook can win. I actually think Matthew could win supporting actor, not Kieran. But I don't know. I'll be happy with like any 3 of them. And to be honest, I haven't really had time to look at all the nominations yet, so I don't know what else is going on. But Succession all the way. If it can't be Better Call Saul for one category somewhere, Succession all the way.
I'll give 3 or 4. I think the way things laid out on comedy supporting, you're going to see another year of Tony Shalhoub and Alex Borstein. Everything seems to line up in that way in my mind. Andrew Scott, I think he makes a big snub from last year on Fleabag. He gets that guest acting drama win pretty easily for Black Mirror. And what was the other one I just saw? Oh, I've been saying we saw the first few, Tom and I and a couple of other editors, we saw the first few Hollywoods before there was ever a quarantine. It was way back at the end of February. It was over in Ryan Murphy's office. And we all said then Jim Parsons is winning, and I think he's winning.
Oh, that's a good one. I do too. I think that's
it's such an over the top. It is so different than Sheldon that I just think he's got a really good. I don't think it hurts him, even though Dylan McDermott is in there from his own show. I do think it helps him that there's 3 Watchmen actors. And often when you got 3 or 4 from a show, that really, like last year, Game of Thrones had 4 supporting actresses. It just kills them. It almost always kills them.
I'm very leery of this Watchmen thing, but the parallel to Game of Thrones is a good one, Chris, because that's a genre show, and of course it got tons and tons of Emmy love. I think the upset that I think really could happen is Rami Youssef, and I think the lock of the night will be Succession for drama. I shouldn't say that. No, Ozark is so strong. I shouldn't say that at all.
And don't discount The Crown. I mean that show.
Yeah, well, no,
often it can clean up on the creative arts. It just won ensemble over Ozark, and Succession wasn't even nominated.
Yeah, but Succession got 9 acting nominations.
Everyone watching can tell there's going to be a lot more of these to come between now and the.
I know. I just talked myself out of my own
prediction. We'll have a better shot next year because they already have season 4 in the can.
This is what our predictions will look like later today. It doesn't mean they'll look like this by this weekend even.
All right, well, we're going to wrap up there, everybody. Watching this and listening to this, go to Gold Derby, make your predictions. They impact our racetrack odds and our rankings, which are monitored closely by Hollywood and all of these nominees. So we care what you think, and it impacts the predictions made here. And keep looking at our predictions and our slugfests, and we're going to do a lot more of these conversations that include your comments too. So come back. Thanks.
Bye-bye.